Roman Catholic tradition, from its early writings, has been obsessed with the question of sexual acts. I think most cogently, St. Augustine brought it to the fore, questioning how our sexual desire itself may be evil. He lived in a time where there were great questions about the quality of the body, about its moral goodness or not, and he was both trying to reconcile that, but also his own personal inclinations, which I truly believe personal experiences should be part of our theology, but not in fact the whole of it. So perhaps had Augustine been able to work through some of those things, we wouldn't land where we are today, but we still rely heavily on his thoughts related to sexual desire.
Augustine was one of the most brilliant people who ever lived, but he could be unbelievably wrong and foolish at times, and that's a good lesson for all of us. And when it came to sexual issues, he was struggling with not only the issue itself, but his own life and his own kind of immature attitude toward sexuality. He said sex is always wrong. It's always sinful in every instance you can think of. Even a couple engaged in sexual expression with the intention of having children are still sinning. And he said the essence of the sin is in the pleasure.
He even said that babies are born, they're born with original sin. How did the poor little thing get it? And it got it because it was infected by the sexual passion of the parents that led to their conception. If Augustine had heard of cloning, he would have loved it. The little creature could arrive clean as a whistle, uncontaminated by any preliminary sexual pleasure.
The general tendency of the teaching, for example, from St. Augustine, who hardly practiced this himself, of course, for most of his history, but was, don't have any sex at all, even in marriage, unless you want a child. Well, if you say that every sexual act should be open to the transmission of life, you would basically say that Catholics should have very few sexual acts. In other words, you're really denying what has been generally affirmed in Catholic teaching, namely that sexual acts really have a legitimate purpose to express love and even pleasure.
It could be a sign of respect for another person. It could be a sign of love for another person. And there are obvious pleasures that associate with sexual activity. I think all of these factors should be taken into consideration rather than just fixating on the idea that in order to have moral sex, it would have to have something to do with procreation.
I have often said that Christianity for 15 centuries has labored under the shadow of Augustine because his influence was so negative. It led to insistence on celibacy for clergy. It made all sex seem evil. And Augustine's unfortunate obsession with sexual pleasure in a negative way is a shadow that has cast itself upon all subsequent Christians.